What exactly are you investigating?
Well, Margaret, to be clear, the initial fraud that was discovered by the IRS, for which I'm the acting commissioner, is discovered by IRS Criminal Investigations Unit. This was not an endogenous thing that the state of Minnesota decided we had to go in and clean up the mess for them, and this is part of the continued cleanup.
So it's pretty obvious that somebody is lying here. The Republicans keep saying that this Minnesota fraud case was uncovered by the feds or by the IRS or whoever. You hear a bunch of different federal agencies mentioned. And, of course, Omar and Tim Walz claimed they were the ones that uncovered it.
I want to pick up on where the Treasury Secretary just left off. He alleged that people who were tied to you or your campaign were involved in this broad, brazen scheme to rip off the Minnesota state welfare system. Do you want to respond to that? Do you know what he is referring to?
I really don't, and I don't think the secretary himself understands what he's referring to. We obviously had people who were able to donate to our campaign that were involved. We sent that money back a couple years ago. And actually, I was one of the first members of Congress to send a letter to the Secretary of Ag. Yeah, I was one of the first members of Congress to send a letter to the Secretary of Ag asking them to look into what I thought was a reprehensible fraud that was occurring within the program.
Right.
So Omar says she was one of the first people to point it out, as you would figure. We can't rely on old left-leaning Margaret Brennan to actually get to the bottom of this for us. So I thought, well, let me look on ChatGPT and Grok and these different areas. And here's what I'm finding. So the first to uncover what is now called the Feeding Our Future fraud in Minnesota was the Minnesota Department of Education, the MDE. They then turned it over to the FBI, who started their investigation in 2021. That's what I found in a couple places I've looked, and when I clicked on the sources, that's what I read. I didn't really see Bessett's IRS claim, and I definitely didn't see Ilhan Omar or Tim Walz claims that they were the first ones to report it.
In the past 3 years, 87 people have been charged, 61 convicted, most of Somali descent.
Now let's look at the argument that this money went to terrorism in Africa. There's been comments about that from independent conservative sources, and the liberal media says, no, not a chance. And of course, you can't count on Margaret to really ask this question fairly. Look how she even asked it in the negative here.
House Republicans and the Treasury Secretary just now talked about a link to terrorism, a possible link. He said they're just now beginning to look into it. How confident are you that that's a false claim? How confident are you that that's a false claim?
I'm pretty confident at the moment because there are people who have been prosecuted and who have been sentenced. If there was a linkage in that the money that they have stolen going to terrorism, then that is a failure of the FBI and our court system in not figuring that out and basically charging them with these charges. And so I do know that for many years, this sort of like alarm that there is money being transferred through the airport in bags and going to terrorism that accusation has always existed. There's never been here and there in those accusations.
A lot of money has been transferred from the individuals who committed this fraud, including those who donated to the governor, donated to Representative Omar, and donated to A.G. Ellison. But they've been transferred to something called UNBIASED. And those are...
Mortgage-backed security? What do you mean?
Sorry?
Transferred to what?
These are money the Bureau services, and they are wire transfer organizations that are outside the regulated banking system. And that money has gone overseas. And we are tracking that both to the Middle East and to Somalia to see what the uses of that have been.
Okay, but you have no evidence of that money being used to fuel terrorism at this point, which is what some conservative writers are alleging.
That's why it's an investigation. We started it last week. We'll see where it goes. We'll see where it goes. But I can tell you that, it's terrible. Representative Omar tried to downplay it, said, oh, it was very, it was very tough to know how this money should be used.
Yeah.
She was gaslighting the American people.
Well, we'll talk to her.
Yeah, but when you come to this country, you got to learn which side of the road to drive on. You got to learn to stop at stop signs, and you got to learn not to defraud the American people.
Well, there are plenty of criminal behavior from communities well beyond the immigrant community. But we'll talk about this with Representative Omar shortly. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Good.
So separately, CBS has reported that there is an investigation. They're looking into it, so we'll find out soon enough. So he's right. There is an investigation going on. And let's not just say, oh, there's no chance that could have happened, like Ilhan Omar was trying to say.
Some House Republicans on an oversight committee in Washington announcing in a news release they're launching their own investigation into the allegations of fraud and accusations that some of that money could have been funneled directly to terror groups overseas. But I spoke with a number of federal investigators, and they tell me there is no evidence that happened. Instead, the fraudsters allegedly stole the money and kept it for themselves and spent it on things like cars, houses, diamonds, and so much more.
Of the 87 people charged, all but 8 are of Somali descent, and that has added to the spotlight being put specifically on your community. Why do you think this fraud was allowed to get so widespread?
Well, I want to say, this also has an impact on Somalis because we are also taxpayers in Minnesota. We also could have benefited from the program and the money that was stolen. And so it's been really frustrating for people to not acknowledge the fact that we're also, as Minnesotans, as taxpayers, really upset and angry about the fraud that has occurred.
I want to ask you about something else that the architect of the president's immigration policy, Stephen Miller, said. On Thanksgiving Day, he posted, "No magic transformation occurs when failed states cross borders. At scale, migrants and their descendants recreate the conditions and terrors of their broken homelands." What do you make of this argument of failure to assimilate and sort of ruining America? How do you understand this?
I mean, when I think about Stephen Miller and his white supremacist rhetoric,
Boy, here we go.
It reminds me of the way the Nazis described Jewish people in Germany.
All right. Well, if you're watching me right now, that means that you made it to the end of this video. So thanks for watching all the way through. I'm Eddie, and this is my Ovation guitar, hence the name of the channel, Ovation Eddie. Just a quick reminder to subscribe to this channel. And when you subscribe, you won't miss videos that you want to share with your Democrat and independent friends and family members. You know who they are. They need to see these so they can understand why you and I are so frustrated with the liberal media bias. Until my next video, God bless you and rock on.